real treat to have 6 former Parabats with John and I today. All of them served for a while in Rhodesia at a critical time in our history. And my word, I'm just picking up bits and pieces, and as somebody who feels he knows quite a lot about what happened, I'm finding out there's a lot I didn't know. So I really hope we can throw some light on some events that are not actually well recorded as far as I'm aware. But I know you guys aren't all Afrikaans, but I just want to say a bit about the Afrikaner English story in Rhodesia. And when I look back, it was one of the wonders of the country, I think. The fact that there was really no ethnic divide. It broke down very quickly in Rhodesia. The Afrikaner English relationship, there was, for some reason, it was the sort of magic of the country. I think Afrikaners and English-speaking people just became Rhodesians very, very quickly. And I think that's why we were able to punch above our weight, was because there was no division between Afrikaans and English. And I think a lot of that goes back to the schools and sport, and particularly rugby, which broke down all those possible barriers between English and Afrikaans speaking people. And we quickly became one nation with one flag and one cause. And I think it was just one of the wonderful things about growing up in that country. And as a result, a lot of Afrikaans speaking guys really made a huge impact on the war. Blokes like Chris Schillenberg, Andre Skeepers, Piet van der Riet. And I also just want to say, the number of South African former soldiers I speak to who say, geez, we feel so bad about what happened. And it wasn't the soldiers' fault. It's the old story. The politicians dominate the arena, and the soldiers just do what they were told. But I must say, just being with you guys today, it does make me a little sad that we didn't see more of you, because if we'd had more of you guys up there, I think things might have turned out a little differently. But anyway, that's all in the past. So I want to start off with Rob Kilby and Louis Soman, who were with D Company, came in end of 70 or mid 79. Louis, just tell us how it all started for you. When were you told you were going to Rhodesia?
We actually weren't told that we were going to go to do a stunt in Rhodesia. We were flown from Bloemfontein with our trommels to a place called Madimbo. There was a huge runway. There was no bungalows, a few tents, and we arrived there with our trommels and thinking that that's going to be our new base camp for the next couple of months. And I think out of a security point of view, that we were told the night before that some Rhodesian officers is arriving the next day, and that the mission would be to go and do a stunt of a couple of weeks in Rhodesia, Rob?
Correct, yeah. Spot.
And then knowing that, the next day choppers arrived. They flew over the Limpopo River, landed at Madimbo, and outstepped a number of Rhodesian officers. I think if it comes to mind that it was definitely Lieutenant Colonel Hammonds. Another name was RSM Hallamore. So they started briefing us. But I think to get back to your initial question of how did we get there? In retrospect, as I understand it, definitely the South African government realized that although the Rhodesians were tactically winning the war, they were actually losing the war. The successes that they achieved was just countered by sanctions and international pressure.
Yeah.
And the government realized, if this spills over into the northern part of South Africa, there's a serious problem. And that's when they decided to put boots on the ground.
So what date was that?
That was in September 1979. The exact date that we left for Rhodesia was probably about the 15th of September or the 19th of September. But first we had a wonderful training session with these Rhodesian guys, just sharpening us on fire force, deployment, rifle shooting, obviously terrain that we were used to rob in Namibia, northern Ovamboland.
Yeah, so we'd, just to interrupt, our theatres of operation had been in Namibia, Southwest Africa, obviously Angola and Zambia. So we'd seen the different terrains, but Rhodesia was obviously a whole new ballpark for us as well, just to come across and see the difference. Because as in Southwest Africa and Novemberland, it was dry, desert-like conditions, very arid, that type of thing, and very open. Whereas in Rhodesia you had thick bush and the gormos, and obviously the dry riverbeds, that type of thing as well. So we had to adapt to that, and obviously not having, and as Louis mentioned earlier, the fire force and the way of shooting was totally different and reacting to the way we'd been taught. So that was the interesting part as well. Right. And as Louis said, that first week was very intensive training. Learning the way things the Rhodesians did things. For example, as I mentioned, just reacting by firing, they'd shoot LMGs, the light machine gun, from the hip. That type of thing. Is that right?
That's
you
right,
remember that type of thing? We'd never done that type of thing because we'd have the OP on a different side. The firing guys on a different side shooting in, that type of thing, and where it was completely different. So it was very interesting to see as well. And Louis, the other thing was also with the eyesight. Remember?
Oh yes, absolutely. We were on the shooting range just probably hours before we left, and RSM Hallamore came to me and said, "Sonny boy, what are you doing here today?" I said, "I'm aiming and I'm shooting, sir." He says, "Why is your one eye closed?" I said, "Well, I want to hit the target." He says, No. You don't close your eyes when you shoot at a target. You keep your eyes open." And
interesting.
Very quickly, I tried that, and for the rest of my army stunt, that was probably the greatest lesson I've learned, is that your repeatability, your eye coordination of what's in front of you. You don't close an eye, lose sight of what's happening in front of you. You've got perspective throughout the bush. Did you get somebody? Where are they running to? So that was a great lesson that was never taught by the South African Army. And
but Louis, am I right? You didn't arrive with much in the way of kit.
Absolutely. So now we were told we are heading towards the Triangle area, and that was going to happen that night. So the reason that I said that we arrived with our trommels, all our kit were loaded back into the trommels, and there we stood in our underpants on the tarmac, going somewhere that we've never been before.
In your underpants.
In our underpants, and even the label of the underpants was cut off. And I think, the reason purely that, we couldn't have been identified as being in Rhodesia, but being trained by the South African Army and being South African soldiers at the time. And we were all national conscripts, so we were all volunteers, which was, in a sense, a blessing. But yeah, so later that night the hippos arrived, and I must say, Hannes, I think this was brilliant because...
That's a vehicle, by the way, the hippo.
The hippo vehicles, the camouflage hippo vehicles. And in one of your talks, you mentioned about a chopper pilot that heard there was problems in Rhodesia. He came across just to assist with help without any permission.
Yes.
The chopper was blasted full of holes and had to be ferried back with a truck across Beitbridge under cover of darkness and in camouflage netting covering it. And here we go the opposite direction with our rifles to a place that we've never seen before.
Yeah, and they'd filed the serial numbers off the rifles as well. So you couldn't, as Louis said, be identified anything to do with South Africa. Yeah.
So when did they give you some clothes?
when we got to this runway on this huge farm. You remember those huge Rhodesian farms? They called them the ranches as well. I mean, those ranches were the breadbasket of Africa, really. You know, the beef and the anyway. I digress. But the small little farm gravel sand runway, and we got there as well, and we demobbed, got off all the kit was waiting for us there. It was about 50 meters or so off the runway, Lou?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So Hannes, what Rob says, you know, we arrived in our underpants. We were given orders that there's the kit, guys. Just go and fit yourself out. From a toothbrush, soap, a towel, tackies, Rhodesian camouflage, uniforms, and ammunition, which was obviously important. That's why we were there for. And then we were told to pitch the bivvy tents on the side of the runway, about 50 meters from the runway. And we were told to dig a couple of trenches around our bivvies, that if we were attacked, that at least there was a couple of sandbags in front of us and a hole to take cover. And the amazing thing is, as we were busy doing this, an alarm rang, and we thought, okay, you know, part of the training was, this is probably a test run, let's react. Me and Rob was on standby that day as being one of the sticks that would go out in a Puma chopper. But what I need to mention is that, you know, the leader group actually flew over. So when we arrived, that's why they organized all the kits, the clothing. They were already in their tents. We were told there's an HQ where it was, and when this alarm bell went off, we thought, okay, well, maybe it's a bit of a test exercise to see if the training that we received is helping. And that was probably the biggest mistake of my life. You know, we kitted up, we ran like hell, we got to the choppers, we were given orders, and within half an hour of arrival on the farm, it was farmed by, I think it was Bob Gowler. It was quite a prominent figure in those days. There was a sighting of a number of enemy soldiers approaching the farmsteads, and later on proof was found that they were going to take out that homestead that night. Anyhow, so in the choppers we go, the Parrot deck, 20 guys were kitted up, they're in the Dakota, and we deployed. I was on the ground, I'd taken a wonderful little photograph of a first jump in Rhodesia, and I wasn't supposed to have my camera with me, but it was there in the underpants, hidden very nicely. And you know,
I hope they were clean underpants.
In retrospect, you know, it's brought a lot of memories with me. After the initial deployment and the guys hitting the ground, we started the box formation, the movement, and probably 5 minutes later walked into our first serious contacts with the enemy. 3 hours later, one of the, you know, we had to do a body count. We had to clear up the AK-47s, and I think we as buddies had a very bad experience cleaning up afterwards. But I think, Rob, you can tell that, you know, we were taught that, you know, some of these bodies could be booby trapped. So whenever you turn them around, there might be a grenade waiting underneath them, ready to explode in your face. So one of the things that we were taught is tie a rope around the legs, pull the body over. If there's anything, it's not going to explode in your face. And Rob was on the verge one day of saying, you know, we need to get the rifle from this guy. I said, well, Rob, you know, we need to follow the procedure that we were taught. And by golly, Rob.
Yeah, I tied the rope around the chap and pulled him, and sure enough, grenade exploded.
Wow.
And so it was fact.
So
you went in the country very long, and
yeah, as Louis said, within 30 minutes we were called out on straight into combat. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And were you guys completely alone, or did you have any Rhodesian?
No, we had the Rhodesian African rifles. It was 2 RAR, wasn't it, when we first got
With
there?
every stick had one
Rhodesian African rifle with
Oh,
us.
I see.
Yeah, and the guys that would walk with us as well through the bush, and their eyesight was, fantastic in that bush. They were so used to the bush. Often you could be walking, you'd think you'd see something, and they'd say, "Stop! There they are. There they are." The one time I remember, one of our LMG gunner, George Whistle, was walking in the riverbed, and was walking along quite. I was next to him, just in the bush. Saw him, and the guys, our chap said, "There they are under the bush." And we look, and they opened fire at us. And I remember the rounds hitting the sand around George before we opened fire. And and if it wasn't for the RAR guy, we would have walked straight into
It was
ambush.
new terrain for you.
Completely,
Take a while
Yeah.
to.
But we got used to it
To
very
adjust.
quickly. You
Yeah,
had
I'm
to,
sure.
Well, we actually, within a half an hour of arriving in Rhodesia, and Hannes, we've as South Africans felt quite comfortable going to Rhodesia. We had a lot of family members living there, so the news travels very quickly where things and how things are being developed. And definitely, one of the thoughts that went through my head at the time was that, we read of this wonderful Rhodesian army, quite powerful, small, little cohesion of men fighting. And I think the Times magazine at the time that I read said, man for man, part of the best fighting units in the world.
Yeah.
And here we come as outsiders into a new terrain, and we were, initially I thought we were sort of looked down upon, because, our war was completely different.
Yeah.
And that first day, the first contact, the next day we got telegraphs from Ian Smith, we got a telegram from our guys in the battalion.
That's right.
Saying well done.
And saying well done. And then the Rhodesian African rifles, it was like you said, the cohesion that was formed out of a situation of a battle, and it was one battle which led to many more. But all of a sudden we were a unit. It was a band of brothers being forced together, fighting for the same cause. And I think Delta Company specifically, and the guys around me, we were quite young, we were 18 years old, so maybe some of us 19. We were extremely fit unit. We were a very, very proud unit. We had some serious trouble in Zambia that even got us closer. So when the going was getting tough, we just stood together as one. And within that first day, we realized, this is serious. This is not a picnic. And after the congratulations, that next morning streamed in. Half an hour later, the alarm went off, and we started running again. And that's really happened for the next 28 days, which made it more difficult. It was like it was a liberated area. There were large groups of people, enemy moving around the terrain, purely with lots of local support from the local population.
Yeah.
But the observation posts were manned by Rhodesian African rifles, and these guys, boy oh boy, did they know what they did? They would, see a little Mujiba running in, and all of a sudden there would be more water movement to a cluster of trees, and that was passed on to us immediately. So coordinates were given, even if there wasn't a sighting, we knew there was something going to happen, and we prepared, got in sticks, and within half an hour we deployed. So the success of us as being the little fighting unit in the background was probably resting on the soldiers of these OPs that sat there for weeks. And I believe in retrospect there was probably about 300 of them all over that triangle area, because it was a fat movement of guys coming across Mozambique and
into the TTL, that's right, the Miranda TTL, that's quite right. So their job was to obviously effectively cut off that supply. as well. And I remember chatting, I can't remember, to one of the RAR officers, and he had said to us as well after the first couple of contacts, what they had never seen the Rhodesians was firepower and the aggression of the South African troops. They'd never witnessed anything like it before.
That's right.
And I think that is what made the difference. So when we were relieved as Delta by Foxtrot Company and Echo and Easy Company of 1 Parachute Battalion, it was all in place as well. And it was exactly the same, like nothing had changed. The guys just kept on going as well. And I think that was ultimately led to the success of that operation.
Everybody was very taken by the aggression. The South African, everybody
It's pre-fitness as well, Hannes. I must admit, I've never been so fit in my life. It's just, you could just go and go and go. And the training was so good as well. Orders, you just followed the orders. You knew the intel from the OPs, the ROR guys were so good. It was incredible how the orders
amazing
came together as well.
synergy there.
Yeah,
But
very much so.
was it the South African Air Force that was looking after you as well? Was it all South African?
No, there was definitely the Air Force. So what had happened was, and that was an interesting question, because they came with us African troops. I remember one of the C-130, the old, the double C-1, they actually landed. The Rhodesian guys said, "It'll never land here," but it could land and take off in less space than the Dakota, aeroplane.
Yeah.
It was actually incredible. But 3 Puma helicopters came with us. And I remember the second fire force who went out, the Rhodesian pilots that manned I think it was called the Lynx, the little push-me-pull-you Cessna, and the guys dropped napalm and everything off the bottom. And they said to the Puma pilots, "Right, you guys go and then we'll follow." And the Puma pilots said, no, you go. We're far faster than you. Because you guys had never seen the Pumas. You all operated out of the Alouettes, the little G cars, or the K cars, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
So it was amazing to see. So that's how we operated. So it would be a stick of 20 bats in the plane jumping, and then 3 Pumas with 10 guys per Puma, and they would be the guys. So the fire force and the paras would drop. The jumpers would jump behind as well and catch the guys running through if there were any to stop them there. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, that's how we operated.
Yeah, definitely the Pumas were, I think, the one thing that the Rhodesian army was in dire straits.
Yeah.
Purely to get more boots on the ground in a quicker manner, and it's, to drop a stick of 10 instead of a stick of 4, it makes a huge difference to the firing power.
Just something I'd like to point out, the political background to the story is P.W. Botha. Everybody likes to lampoon P.W. Botha, but he all along could see that this was he could see the bigger picture, and he was always very pro getting involved in Rhodesia. But his predecessors saw things very differently, particularly John Forster. But it was really, I think, P.W. Botha, when he took over, he said, no, we need to get involved here, because if we don't sort this out, it's going to impact on us. And I think that's why you guys were there. It was really P.W. Botha's decision.
I would fully support that. I think, Forster was probably a détente man that wanted to speak to everybody and didn't see the backbone of the war developing in such a scale, even in Angola. To have the foresight to assist with the situation in Rhodesia. And I think, not that it would have made a huge difference, but in retrospect, there should have been boots on the ground in our neighboring country much, much sooner. The South African Air Force was involved for many a year.
Yeah.
The Reckies were involved for many a year. But we were probably the first guys that had boots on the ground to support, and proved to be very, very successful in retrospect. We were extremely lucky. Not a single guy lost in the 28 days, although we nearly had a contact every day. The groups broke up, became more difficult. So they weren't moving in 40s or 30s anymore. As the word spread around, their groups got smaller. They got a bit streetwise in the sense that they moved at night, so the sightings were more difficult. But sometimes twice a day we went out and to follow up on information that we received. And not a single South African friend of ours had a piece of shrapnel up his backside.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. Just thinking of something Louis mentioned earlier when we landed there after the first day. So the next morning, one of the guys to come and chat to us was General Walls. I think it was Peter Walls.
Yes.
Walls, yeah. He was head of the army, wasn't
Yes.
he? Yeah. So he came and welcome chaps and thanks for your help, so on and so forth. And after your escapades yesterday, please note that we like to take prisoners. We know South Africans don't like taking prisoners, but we like to try and convert them to our side and get intel from them. So we learned quickly then what the guys were looking for. And it's some anecdotes as well. There's always stories as well. You know? One of the South African chaps that came over was the head of the Defence Force here, Jannie Geldenhuys, General Jannie Geldenhuys. And he was just in civvies. And he was walking around talking to the troops. Good luck while you're here, chaps. All the best, motivational speech. Some of the guys didn't know who he was. So this one chap I mentioned earlier, George, and the chap down the Strand, Gavin Rue. So you're having a good time here, Gavin? Said, good time. Where are the beers? Where are the fridges? How are we going to get looked after here? Where's the wheat? Where are the brides? So strangely enough, about 2 or 3 weeks later, planes arrived and there were fridges. Remember, the fridges arrived and meat, and it was incredible.
Oh, really?
And one of the chaps, as troops would do, remember Spoonie Spence?
Absolutely.
He managed to organise his own little French next to his dugout, next to his tent, and of course the sergeant caught him and there was hell to pay. But one of those little
But
stories.
there was some time for drinking beer and having a good
Yeah,
time.
no, it was fantastic.
Well,
I mean,
initially, Rob, the beers were hot. We were out 2 beers a day. One of the clever guys thought, okay, let's use the wet sock method, hang it in the tree. It's at least a bit cooler than a hot beer out of a kitchen cupboard. And then I think it was also Spoonie thought about the brilliant idea of taking a sandbag, empty the sand out of the bag, fill it up with beers, and take the fire extinguisher and spray it with that. And somehow the effect on the wet bag, the beers were cold. It was like coming out of a fridge. But the unfortunate thing is that in this little filled kitchen, one day a fire broke out. One of the gas bottles exploded without anybody getting hurt, and not a single fire extinguisher worked. So all the guys in the kitchen were running around, getting fire extinguishers, putting the pins, and there was just nothing in it.
the more important task of keeping beers cold.
Beers had to be kept cold, and but to get back to the social side, it's the Rhodesian African rifle guys had this wonderful way. Initially, we were on the one side of the runway in our little bivvy tents where we stayed, and they were on the other side. And I know a lot of comments were made about, the South Africans are not wanting to mix, and, the racist thing came up more than once. Within a week, we were all beyond that. We became such good friends. They came over for a beer during the day. We played cards together. I mean, why would we not do that? It was just a band of brothers. That's and the night before we left, they gave us a song and dance show not to forget.
Really?
Like a celebration dance, like they could do it. It was just, that little movements that they made, the sand that was kicked up, the way they sang was in my heart forever. Yeah. Absolutely forever. And one of those things, you take with you back to Ovambaland, because although we left after 28 days, our real war only then started. We had 10 years of 2 months camps that was lying ahead. And I was one of the fortunate guys that all my operational camps were operational. I never did a South African camp around a township. These are the things that you brought forward into your experience and used it later on in life. It was just absolutely fantastic. I would do it again tomorrow.
At the end of it, you were flown out with the C-130s?
Yeah, we were flown out as we arrived with our underpants. And with my camera stuck somewhere that I could use it. But to get back to the camera, I was actually caught more than once by the MPs in Randburg. And they confiscated every little negative and every print that I had. We weren't allowed to take photographs. We weren't allowed to talk about the war. It was that non-existent thing that was far away in another country. And our company commander had me on orders more than once, and we did an external stunt one day, and he said to me, "What's in that ammo pouch?" And I said to him, do you really want to know? He says, no, it's okay, you can take your camera. So, yeah, love taking photographs and
just as well.
Smuggle a few out. And the Rhodesian negatives I saved because, obviously taking it to one of the companies that's like Photo First were on orders. If you see anything, you report it, you phone the MPs, and you confiscate. So those developed by a private guy, and just as well. Nice memories to have.
Very much so. A lot of the kit, the Rhodesian kit as well, we hadn't seen. We didn't operate in camouflage kit then, and because the terrain was completely different. And there was on the runway there were two chaps that operated this weird vehicle that we'd never seen before. But every morning and in dusk, they'd go up and down the runway just checking for mines. So it was a mine sweeping vehicle, but lovely guys as well. And we fed them sosagon, which is like a morphine, which they really loved. It allowed them to pass out in their tents all day. But for the sosagon, we expected something in return. So they'd either organise beers for us, or fresh meat, or Rhodesian kit, little bits of kit, and which we try to hide in our stuff before we went back as well, that type of thing. But obviously didn't work. We got that sort of stuff. We didn't make it. But nevertheless, it was just one of those nice little experiences that we were lucky to share.
Oh, great story, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Great.
And what I was going to say, Lou, as well. I think on one particular day, just to we might finish off with this, the record was broken by. It was never broken. I think that still stands to this day with Fire Force. Does it?
Yeah. There was.
What was the number?
That I recently read. I never kept numbers, but
General McGill Alexander wrote the piece. Yeah.
Of 36 kills in one day in one Fire Force operation that lasted for about 4 hours, and internally I think that was the most ever on a single day in the history of that specific war in that area. And as I said, it was a bit of luck on our side.
Yeah, we were the right place at the right time.
At the right time, and we could do the job, and we wanted to do the job. And on that, there was a feeling that we wanted to be as good as our neighbouring brothers in what they did, but somehow this Delta Company guys always wanted to go one step further, and we did it.
Who was your boss man?
Our boss man was David Blau. There's 3 Blau brothers. One has passed away recently. The other one lives in Hermanus. He was a recce guy. And then Johan Blau is around the Western Cape as well. But David Blau was a real warrior. He was out with us every day. He was a boy's man. He was part of the company. And so whenever we went anywhere, David was right in the centre of everything. Wonderful guy to have around.
Yeah, and honestly, if I can say, just also in closing as well, and I'm sure the other guys will back me up, from Foxtrot and Easy Company, is as young men, we were put through a lot to what we saw. But I think we forged friendships there, and that old story of brothers in arms, like we never formed again in life. And you guys know it as well because you were there. And the friends that you make then, you never ever leave. We had a reunion about 2 years ago, after 40 years, and it was like we hadn't seen it. We'd seen the chaps yesterday, that type of thing. Yeah. And having spent time with them and those guys, that always have your back. And that's where that old story comes from that I've used right through my life. When you really believe in somebody, you'll say, I'll go to war with that person. And that's the bond that we forged, as a Delta Company, and the other guys I'm sure feel the same.
It just makes one a little sad thinking about what might have happened if you guys had come up a bit earlier.
Well, being
changed history.
If you think about history and what, I don't want to get into politics, but I think I want to leave it with this. It's a nice thought to close. When Robert Mugabe took over the country at the ceremony, he was congratulated by Julius Nyerere, which was a clever man in his own right. And the words to Robert Mugabe from Julius Nyerere was, "You've inherited the jewel of Africa. Do not tarnish it." So where are we today? And these questions keep on popping up in my mind as we sit with what's happening around us. So let's hope that South Africa will not be tarnished.
Yeah. We live in
Or
hope.
further tarnished.
Thanks, Louis.
Thanks,
Thank you
Hannes.
very much,
Thanks,
Hannes.
Phil.
John, thank you,
Appreciate
chaps.
it.